here's current account balances. So this is, to simplify, it's like a trade balance, how much you export versus how much you import, and those but it also includes services. The exporting countries have a positive trade balance, so that's Japan, Germany, China up the top, and then these countries down here, the UK, US, Spain, and rest of the world. And it's very symmetrical. It's a symmetrical thing. The only thing is as well, if you're monitoring seismic activity and you want to avoid a tsunami, if you see that happening, run away from the beach, okay? Because something bad is going to happen when things diverge so rapidly. This is 2000, okay? 2000. 2002, 2004. Between 2004 and 2008, look at the range of magnification. This is what we call the global imbalances. That's what happened to them. They rapidly diverged. Now, one more. This is securitization. So this is taking your mortgage, wrapping it up into an obscure package that nobody can value. This is why it all went wrong. This is why Lehman Brothers collapsed, why Northern Rock collapsed. Securitization goes from $500 billion to $2 trillion in the space of 6 years. And then, doctor, the patient's got something wrong with them because suddenly it's gone again. We know why. Because once Lehman Brothers collapsed, nobody wanted to buy any of this stuff. But what I'm trying to show you there is the scale of financialized driven disruption and globalization driven disruption that the economies actually went through. Now, I argue that what made this disruption possible was the ability of central banks to print money, the ability of banks to create their own money through what we call fractional reserve banking. So instead of keeping a third of your deposits there, ready to be used, you shrink it down. And again, I could show you another graph that shows that the rapidity with which banks shrank down the cash on hand was very rapid in the 3 or 4 years before the Lehman collapse. It was a trend, but very rapid towards the end. Fractional reserve banking, massive private derivatives market, ensuring, we were told, because it's complex and liquid, stability. So complexity equals safety. Something's complex and it's got tentacles all over the world, and money is rushing around the world at high velocity. That's safe. Okay, says the theory. And finally, sovereign debts. Massive, massive rise in sovereign debts over this period. Because why? Because we just need the money. Nothing can go wrong. You see, if you then say that the escape route from the classic Kondratiev 50-year up and down was to keep on with every crisis, 1997, Asian financial crisis, gone wrong, print some money, open the floodgates, depress the interest rate, make money very cheap. .com, oh, Y2K. Y2K, that wasn't even a crisis. Nothing actually happened. But while we're at it, print some money, keep interest rates low. .com, interest rates low, print money, allow credit to become cheaper and cheaper and more available. Then, after that, push on through more and more financialized, unmeasurable debt goes into the system. That was, to finish, how policymakers managed to delay the end of the wave. Now, when I call it a wave, of course, data only represents reality. The fact that I'm showing you an up arrow and a down arrow, or if I wanted to, I could show you curves that moved like that. Only for me, and this is where I'm trying to address what you don't like, Mike, about Kondratiev. For me, that's all it means. It's a signal that something exists, just the same as we don't know black dwarfs exist in space by touching them. We have to see their impact on things around them. For me, the existence of the wave pattern is simply demonstrated by the other tangible things. But basically, if you use unlimited money printing to stave off every crisis, what happens is this. 1, the crisis finally comes, and it has come. 2, and I think this is what happened, other things in the general pattern don't wait. They don't wait. So you do get the drawing of new countries into the world economy. You do get the sudden and rapid deployment of new technologies that should be associated with the upswing of the next 50-year phase. I argue there's lots of evidence that is exactly what is happening. The tech and comms revolutions, the revolutions in biomedicine, the revolutions in genetics are real, and real tech, robotics, of course, anybody who works in a factory, so I know we've got some colleagues here who do work in what I imagine is quite a heavily high-tech factory. The world of work, of science, of comms is transformed in your lifetime in such a way that is recognisably the start of a 50-year upswing. The problem is it's suppressed by the 50-year, by the delayed onset of the crisis. Now, to finish, I told you it wasn't going to all be left-wing propaganda, and it was Ludwig von Mises who, makes Margaret Thatcher look a little bit like a liberal, who said that the only way you avoid the collapse of a boom brought about by unlimited money printing is to limit the money printing. And your only choice is if you do it now or later as a final and quotes total catastrophe of the system. Now, I'm not predicting this is going to be a final and total catastrophe of the system. What it is going to be is a choice that's going to come quite quickly, I think, in the next 5 to 10 years on certain economies. Some not, some will escape. But the economies, basically, that have saved themselves through this crisis by printing money and extending their debts, their sovereign debts, and sitting on a massive pile of private debt, are going to have to decide who pays the price of putting it all back together again. So when they stop printing the money, when the money printed has to be bought back out of the bank balance sheets, back into the Bank of England or the Fed, and when the American 14 trillion, or is it $16 trillion debt, finally does stop rising, and American spending has to fall, and when banks, and even now, look at RBS, some of these major banks that are supposedly saved, still trembling over the slightest movement of bond prices in case it just takes them underwater. Those of you who might remember, maybe one or two people do, the 30s. Some people have parents. I have grandparents who remember the 30s. There wasn't television, there wasn't internet, there wasn't much by way of mass communication. So people don't really know the story, but the story was that one after the other, countries decided to dump the cost, the social cost of escaping from the crisis onto each other. And we'll be really lucky, I think, if we get away without that happening. When it does, there is, however, and I'll finish on this, because you always have to finish on something optimistic. In the 30s, it was really true that technology had stagnated, that it wasn't possible for new inventions to be deployed. We're living in a period where new inventions are massively being deployed because, as I say, as it were, it's like the two tectonic plates. The edge of one period is overhanging the beginning of the next. And so there's by no means, the outcome is by no means all catastrophic and disastrous. But I think the stakes for countries and for groups of people, classes, demographics, youth, elderly people, there'll become a moment where I think people will be pitched against each other, countries, classes, etc. And there'll be a fractious exit. Now, that is all I came to say. And I think by what I've tried to do is by looking at the theories of a dead, indeed executed economist who is highly contested even now, and about whom there is much more to say that could be critical and exploratory, is I've tried to throw a light on the period you're in that goes beyond, just as these lights on me are from a long distance and throw a sharp shadow that goes beyond 5-year, 10-year. A 50-year light on the period is something that we rarely see. We certainly don't see it on the news, we don't see it in classrooms, we don't see it in school and university. But by doing so, I think it helps us as a mental exercise to understand where we might be going. And with that I'll stop, but before I do, I will do one thing, because I've only just noticed this. I will thank the school student I've just noticed in the audience for sitting through something that I had pitched at the very least to undergraduates. So thank you.